By putting shit in the title of this video and then using that word within 5 seconds of the video starting, I've pretty much sealed the deal and guaranteed that this video will be buried on YouTube. Never recommended, never suggested. And that's okay, because sometimes a topic just requires that you say, I don't give a fuck. Most of the time, I make a video. If there's something I have to say that might get my video off the recommended list, I'm okay with that. I balance between discussing things that are important to me and things that I really want to share, and also being cautious in not sharing something that won't ever get recommended or shared. But this is a topic that I think YouTube already buries completely. And that's the darkness, of the human in any way, shape, or form. There's this illusion that we're always happy, or this illusion that even if we're sad, we can just play the victim and get a pat on the back. Sometimes there's nobody that can pat you on the back. Sometimes shit just gets rough. And we all face it in our own way. And we don't have to. As far as we have to face it in our own way, but we don't have to face it alone. And that's why there are so many support groups. It's one of the most, even among so many different types of people, politically, religious-wise, when it comes to therapy, people, of all different walks of life say, this helped me. I've never been to any type of therapy myself. My therapy is personal, and therefore I would say that if you asked me 10 years ago, I would say that my self-therapy has been the answer to not, having to respond to somebody else's bullshit version of life. But I see it differently today, not just for myself, but for other people. If you can actually get somebody who wants to listen to you and you can share ideas with, it doesn't matter if they know more or less than you. It doesn't matter even how advanced they are within their, therapy realm. It depends on the connection you make with another person. And that's what it all comes down to. And that's why today's sponsor is BetterHelp. Totally kidding. I am completely kidding. Fuck BetterHelp. I do not condone them at all. They sold people's data to all these different companies. And funny enough, making a video like this, if I'd actually reached out to BetterHelp and said, I'm going to make a podcast and a video about this topic, they probably would pay me to do it, and that makes me maybe an asshole in bringing home money for the family, but it eases my conscience in knowing that I have no interest in supporting a company with poor morals. But that aside, the point I'm making here is that therapy can be important. It can be useful for people. It needs to be a therapist you look in the eyes. I would say it's very important that you can see a person one-on-one if that's what you need. But moving on, I'm not here to talk about therapy. I'm here to talk about the fact that, I've learned to deal with shit in my own life without therapy. And just being able to say, I'm human, we're all human, trying to make it through. I've had a rough go of it the last few days. Several different things have come at me at once. Some started out as maybe my own doing, but others, my boss, I've worked for this guy for like a year. And the first job he sent me on was working for a guy who, let's just say, he worked for like 20 years for Intel, and then he moved on to working for Nvidia, and now he works for Meta, and he's an engineer. And so he has plenty of money. Moved up here from Cali, sold a mansion down there in LA, I guess, and then decided to put his money into a 2,000 square foot house. Like, I think it's even less than that. And I've been there for the last year converting his, with the other guys, not just me, but converting his house into something he loves. We had a garage door put in that's just for bringing his bicycles outside, a custom back deck where he can, and a fence where he can pull his van in. Unbelievable amount of cool custom shit that's just for him. And that's what he wanted. Take all that money and put it into something small. And he spent a lot of money to get it done the way he wanted. And I had to go back to do about maybe 2 days of work to finish putting in a little custom weather stripping for the garage door thing over the floor, and then a little piece of paneling he had to order. And I got to work today, and my coworker was like, "Do you hear about Paul?" I was like, "No, what?" So about a month ago, Paul had his son over, and they were talking, and his son was depressed. And I remember, I heard him talking in the yard. He was trying to get his son to like respond, and he was just basically not responding at all. Paul goes on a lot of trips for work. He came home and his son had killed himself in his house. The house that we had just remodeled, that we'd spent all this time to get perfect for him. His son took his own life in his house last week. And I was just like, I started crying at work. Like, tears came to my eyes, and even my coworker, he's this Mexican guy. His name's, I've got a couple different dudes I work with, but anyway, I don't want to give names, but let's just say he's like, "I wanted to cry too." And I was like, it's okay, do it. It's so sad. I met the guy just like a month before, and it's just so sad that somebody's so depressed in his 20s that he's willing to take his own life. And it breaks my heart, because I know one of my oldest son, I think he had thoughts like that when he was at one time or another. I'm sure he did. We all have, but I don't want to get into my personal life, but let's just say I care so much about my family, and I don't want to see anybody think that their life isn't worth saving. Okay? My grandmother, my dad's mom, blew her head off with a shotgun out in Idaho, like back in, I want to say it must have been like 1990, maybe, because my dad got cancer around then and then died in like 91, 92. So I don't remember, it could have been 91 or 92. I guess, doesn't matter. I went to school like the day he died, and 2 days later school started, and I went on my first day just to say, I'm not going to let this define me. And so perhaps the theme of this video is death. We see it all the time. Anybody who's been with my channel for a while, if you followed my channel for years, you probably know, yeah, we lost our niece, who was, are in her early 20s, just a few years ago. I lost my mom last November. My wife lost her mom like a month or two before that. I lost my dad when I was 14. She lost her dad about 12 years ago, I think 10 years ago. And the list goes on. This doesn't even count the people who, my friend that they found in his apartment overdosed, who could have been there for like a month for all I know. And it's fucked up. We all die. We got to face it. We got to be able to come to terms with that. So I know a lot of people never really do. They don't. I've met plenty of people who are older than me who won't even talk about death, won't even bring it up. To me, if somebody stops and they were to just look me in the eye and bring up death and start talking about it, it's never something that I'm like, oh, I can't handle it, I can't talk about it. You have to be able to handle that shit. I don't care who you are. We don't have to like it, but if somebody comes to you and they want to talk about mortality, it's important that we be able to converse with those people and not feel awkward about it, because ultimately, memento mori, remember you will die. Okay, it's extremely important. It's not that you need to have some dark, dystopian philosophy, or maybe you think that, nihilism has something to do with death, which it doesn't, but just the idea that you don't have to take society's version of grieving or mourning, or, you can celebrate life. You don't have to fear death for yourself, especially, because that's the most important thing. But also, when others around you die and those you love, don't let it go to your head and take it personal. Oh, god dang it. Sorry, I need to get stain and primer for work. Can't forget that. Out of my own personal stash. Yeah, good timing, right? The one alarm that I set like once a month. So what we need to do, I think, is embrace that fact. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. All of us die. And you can't get away from it. Another one would be amor fati, or, love your fate. Amor, meaning love, and fati is fate. Latin is amazing. It's a great language, but so many different slogans that you can see that people have been wrestling with these ideas for a long time. You don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when those around you are going to die. This is what it is. When somebody dies, you celebrate their life. You can still mourn and cry, and you will. I cry about my loved ones, all the time. I would say, I guess, at least a couple times a year I break down thinking about what could have been with my father, or still, because my mom died last November. It hasn't even been a year yet. And she fell, like, I don't know what happened getting out of the shower. It was a fucked up situation. Completely not what I had hoped for, because she had wanted to die. She was sick of life, but I didn't really believe that. And then that happening kind of, I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it's going to nag me for life, because you lose a loved one and you're always going to be upset for life. You can't get rid of it. People, yeah, time heals all wounds, but my father died when I was like 15, 14, and I think about it all the time, right? Maybe we're not supposed to forget, you know? Maybe it's just about remembering, because otherwise, what are we living for? They say you only die when you're forgotten. So keep remembering the loved ones. I think one of the hardest issues for people is blaming themselves for things that aren't their fault. That could be a really tough one. I have no words for that. I think a lot of people just feel like they can kind of absorb some of the pain by putting it on themselves. This is like self-flagellation, grab the cat o' nine tails and whip yourself in the back for an hour. It's silly, but people do it, and that's what works for them. But there's enough suffering without having to put ourselves in a situation of taking blame for the loss of other ones. There are situations where a person has, perhaps not lived up to their parenting role or their friendship role, and they feel like somebody died because they weren't there and they should have been. I get that, but you still can't blame yourself. Shit happens. And we have to move on. And I guarantee if I died, no matter what the circumstances, unless a person had malice and bad intent, if somebody killed me on accident, a family member, a friend, whatever, I would say, please move on. Please move forward. Don't fucking ever hold yourself back because of my dead corpse. And I would think that most people would feel the same way, you know. And if they don't, then they should, because when you're dead, you're dead. Your spirit may carry on, or your soul, rather. Your spirit is, this comes down to kind of the Holy Trinity, which would be, body, mind, and spirit. And mind is soul. It's subconscious. And spirit is like who you are in this world, your ego. So think of spirit as ego, mind as subconscious, the deeper soul of yourself, and body as obviously the body that we live with. And trying to navigate this world with the limited time that we have can be hard. But watching people die around us, not only do we get, makes us sad, but then we get paranoid about our own mortality. And it gives us a little kick in the ass to try a little harder while we're here. I think that if we were eternal, it could be miserable, Nature does what it needs to do. A turtle can live for a couple hundred years, few hundred years. Tortoise, rather. Slow moving animals can live for, 4 times as long as us, at least 3 times longer. But that's because they have nothing to prove. The energy it takes to be a human means that any ego developing over 500 years would probably just become pointless in itself. Therefore, we all have to die and be reborn as something different, if you will. I'm still getting to that point, still figuring out what I believe on that front. I have several books about different religions and reincarnation, everything else. One I've been reading for like 30 years, but bits and pieces. And that one's called, what is it? Who Are You? And it's interesting to listen, read different parts each decade and kind of get something new out of it and be like, oh, I get that. But I have my own perspective on what it means to be human. And, when people die, I do the best I can to accept it. Say that's what happened. And I don't want to be cold. I don't want to seem like I don't care. But I do care. I cry when I need to. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. I just wanted to talk about that because of my customer's son that killed himself in the house that we just remodeled and spent like 2 years on. And this is a guy who was very serious about this house. Like, he got there and the kitchen was newly remodeled already when he moved in. He didn't like the design. He had to tear out all the tile, the kitchen, the appliances, gave away the appliances, gave the dude I worked with like this fucking $2,000 like Bosch dishwasher. Bought all new appliances, had custom counters, all this shit built, and then tiled, and then didn't like that. And then had it redone again by us. Not as on our fault. He just didn't like the design. It was redone 3 times, basically. And he finally got the whole house the way he liked it. I spent months there at carpenter wages. I know how much it cost him. And in the end, he has to give the whole place up because he realizes all that matters is family. And if you lose a loved one in that house, it changes the whole perspective. And I feel so bad for the guy, It just sucks. It just sucks people have to go through that shit. I can't imagine losing someone that I love that much, a child in my own home. It's one thing to lose a child. It's another thing to lose it in your own home. You would never want to be there again. If you came home from your trip, he goes on trips to like Cali and on biking trips and stuff like that. He came back and, found his son dead in the house. It's a horrific thing. A parent losing a child is probably the worst thing that anyone can imagine. But you also have to push on and push forward. It's hard. I can't even imagine. But anyway, I just wanted to share some thoughts on life, death, and this mortality, this time we have to really grasp what we have while we're here, make the most of it. And that doesn't have to be complicated or something grandiose. That's the most crucial thing I want to get through. Everybody's doing their own fucking thing, and nobody has the right to tell anybody else what they should be doing with their life. And it gets very complicated when you're like married, or you have parents who expect things like the way that kids and parents, their relationship can be difficult, but you still have to stand up for what you feel in your heart. And no matter how hard we try to just live a normal, calm, efficient, happy life, the next thing you know, somebody you know dies, and then on and on the cycle goes. And that's okay if we can come to terms with it. So I'm going to go get myself some more dinner. I just ate some, but I'm getting hungry again. So anyway, enough about death, enough about all that stuff. I'll talk to you next time. Peace and love.